every city has a place like this. A coffee shop wedged between a dry cleaner and a shuttered bookstore, easy to miss unless you know to look for it. The awning is faded green. The bell above the door doesn't ring so much as cough. And every morning, at exactly 7:12 a.m., the same black town car pulls up outside. The man who steps out of it is worth $11 billion. He orders a plain black coffee, medium. Nothing else. It costs $3. He always pays with a 20. He always tells her to keep the change. For 14 months, Elena Reyes had been trying not to wonder why. Elena had worked at Cross and Bean for 2 years before she learned who Julian Cross actually was. In the beginning, he was just a face, tired eyes, an expensive coat, a man who never seemed to be in a hurry despite clearly having somewhere important to be. He didn't check his phone while he waited. He didn't take calls. He just stood there, at the end of the counter, watching the espresso machine hiss like it was the most interesting thing in his day. The first time he overtipped, she thought it was a mistake. She called after him, "Sir, sir, you gave me a 20, but he didn't turn around. He just raised a hand, half wave off, and pushed through the door into the cold. The next morning, he did it again. And the morning after that, $3 for the coffee. $17 left behind, every single time. Like a ritual he wasn't aware he was performing. Or was performing so deliberately that it looked unconscious. By the third week, Elena stopped chasing him down. By the third month, she stopped questioning it out loud, though her manager, Doris, certainly didn't. That man could buy this whole block and not blink, Doris told her one slow afternoon. You know who he is, right? Elena admitted she didn't. Julian Cross, Doris said. Like the name alone should mean something. Cross Dynamics. He built half the software running half the hospitals in this country. Man's got more money than the Bulls' payroll, and he stands in my shop every morning like he's got nowhere else to be. Elena had looked him up that night out of curiosity more than anything. Photos of him in magazines, stiff-shouldered in tailored suits, standing behind podiums with words like innovation and legacy stitched into the captions. He looked different in those photos. Guarded. In the shop, in the gray hush of early morning, he looked almost peaceful. She decided not to treat him any differently. That was the deal she made with herself. He was a customer, a generous one. Nothing more. It worked for a while. The first real conversation happened on a Tuesday, in February, when the espresso machine jammed and Elena had to make his coffee by hand, apologizing the entire time. Sorry, she said. Sorry, it's going to be a minute. The machine's having a personality crisis. Take your time, he said with the faintest smile. I'm not going anywhere. It was the first full sentence she'd ever heard him say. His voice was lower than she expected, unhurried, like he measured his words before spending them, the way some people measure money. You never seem to be in a rush, she said. Kind of a shock, for a guy who… And she caught herself before finishing. For a guy who what? He asked. Nothing, never mind, she said. You can say it, he told her. For a guy who supposedly runs a company with 4,000 employees and should have somewhere more important to be than a coffee shop that still uses paper cups. Something like that, she admitted, surprised into a laugh. These most important place I go all day, he said. He said it simply, without weight, the way you'd mention the weather. And then he took his coffee, left his 20 on the counter, and walked out before she could ask him what he meant. She thought about that sentence for the rest of the week. Spring came slow that year. The kind of Chicago spring that argues with itself. 60 degrees on Monday, snow on Thursday. Through all of it, Julian Cross kept coming. 7:12 a.m. Black coffee. A 20 on the counter. $17 behind every day, like a tide that never failed to come in. Elena began to notice things she hadn't let herself notice before. He always sat facing the door, but never checked it nervously. More like a habit than a fear. He always ordered the same size in the same tone, but he never seemed bored by the repetition. And on rainy days when the shop was nearly empty, he lingered a few minutes longer than usual, like he was in no rush to return to whatever waited for him outside. One morning, pouring his coffee, she finally asked, "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask," he said. "Why here?" she pressed. "A man like you, no offense, could have coffee delivered from anywhere. Private chefs, personal baristas, whatever rich people have instead of us mortals microwaving instant coffee." He considered it. "Would you believe me if I said I like the walk?" From where? She asked. Your driver drops you right outside. A small smile crossed his face, caught. You've been paying attention. It's kind of hard not to, she said. You're the only customer who tips more than the coffee costs. Something shifted in his expression then. Barely, like a curtain moving an inch in a house you thought was empty. Maybe I'll tell you sometime, he said. Not today. He left before she could push further. But sometime was new. Before that morning, he had never promised her anything at all. Doris had worked in that neighborhood for 22 years, long enough to have opinions about everyone in it, and she did not keep them to herself. You're smiling more since he comes in, she told Elena one afternoon. I smile at all the customers, Elena said. Not like that you don't, Doris said. Doris, Elena warned. I'm just saying, Doris went on. A man like that, giving the same tip every day for over a year? That's not generosity, honey. That's a message. Rich men don't do anything by accident. Least of all with their money. Maybe he just doesn't care about $17, Elena offered. Maybe, Doris allowed. Or maybe $17 means something to him that it doesn't mean to you or me. You ever think about that? Elena hadn't, not until that moment. But once the thought was planted, it didn't leave. She started paying closer attention, the way he always ordered before checking his watch, never after. The way his eyes moved to the corkboard by the door, the one covered in flyers for lost cats and piano lessons and community theater auditions, like he was looking for something specific and never finding it. She didn't ask again for a while. But she watched. The rain came hard in April, the kind that turns Chicago sidewalks into rivers and umbrellas into casualties. Elena expected the shop to be empty. Most regulars skip days like this. But at 7:12 a.m. sharp, the bell coughed and there he was soaked to the shoulder, his driver nowhere in sight. You walked, she said, half a question. Car broke down 4 blocks up, he said. Didn't want to be late. Late for coffee, she asked, teasing. Late for this, he said quietly. Whatever this is. She handed him a towel from behind the counter before she even thought about it. An instinct, nothing more, and he took it with a kind of surprise, like no one had done something that small for him in a long time. Thank you, he said. It's a towel, not a kidney, she said. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time she'd heard. Still, he said, thank you. He sat at the counter that morning instead of standing. He stayed 20 minutes instead of 5. And when she finally worked up the nerve, she asked him the question that had been sitting behind her teeth for 14 months. The tip, she said. The same amount every day. I have to know why. He looked at her for a long moment. Long enough that she thought he might simply get up and leave, the way he always avoided the question before. But this time, he didn't reach for his coat. Do you really want to know? He asked. I've wanted to know for over a year, she said. He drew a breath, like he was setting something down he'd been carrying a long time. Okay, he said. He told her about his mother. Her name was Marianne. She had raised him alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Cicero, working as a waitress at a diner not unlike this one, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. She used to come home smelling like coffee and bacon grease and exhaustion, and she used to count her tips at the kitchen table every night, sorting quarters into little paper tubes. There was this one customer, he said. Older man, came in every morning for years. He never said much to her, but he always left her $17, every single day. She used to say that $17 was the difference between them making rent and not making rent some months. $17, Elena repeated quietly. When I was 12, he went on. I asked her why he left the same amount every time. She said some people can't say the things they mean out loud, so they find other ways to say them. She said that $17 wasn't about the money. It was him telling her, every single day I see you. What you do matters. Someone noticed. He looked down at his coffee, turning the cup slightly, like he needed something to do with his hands. She died 4 years ago, he said, before Cross Dynamics went public, before any of the money meant anything. I started coming here about a year and a half ago, after a bad year, a board takeover attempt, lawsuits, the whole circus. I needed somewhere no one wanted anything from me. And I started leaving the same tip because he stopped, started again, because I liked the idea that somewhere in this city, some part of my day was still about noticing someone. Not a merger, not a headline. Just you, showing up. Doing your job well, every single morning, whether anyone was watching or not. I had no idea, she said, barely audible. No one did, he said. That was the point, the rain kept falling outside, but neither of them was looking at it anymore. Something changes when a person hands you the truth like that, carefully, like it might break on the way over. Elena found herself thinking about Marianne, about the paper tubes of quarters, about a woman she'd never met who had shaped, without knowing it, the reason a billionaire chose her small shop over anywhere else in the city. Your mom sounds like she was remarkable, she said. She was tired, mostly, he said. But yeah, remarkable too. I think you've been leaving me $17 a day to keep a promise to her, Elena said. He looked up. Maybe, he said. Or maybe I started telling myself that's what it was, and somewhere along the way, it turned into something else. Like what? She asked. Like I stopped thinking about the money the moment I stopped thinking about my mother and started thinking about you, he said. The words landed between them, plain and unshowy, the way he seemed to say everything that mattered. Julian, she started. You don't have to say anything, he said. I've had 14 months to build up to that sentence. I don't expect you to have an answer in 14 seconds. She laughed, despite herself, despite the strange gravity of the moment. Give me 15, she said. What followed wasn't a movie montage. There was no sudden kiss in the rain, no swelling music, no grand declaration outside her apartment window. It was slower than that. Truer than that, he kept coming at 7:12 a.m., but now he stayed for 15 minutes instead of 5. He learned her last name, Reyes, and the fact that she was saving up for community college, business classes, a plan to open her own shop someday. Something small and warm like Cross and Bean but entirely her own. What would you call it? He asked her once. I don't know yet, she admitted. Something that doesn't sound like a chain. Something that sounds like a person actually thought about it. You'll figure it out, he told her. You strike me as someone who figures things out. She learned things about him too. That he hated the podiums and the headlines, that he'd rather read old paperback mysteries than any business book, that he still, after everything, made his own coffee at home badly on purpose. Because it reminded him he was capable of small, ordinary things. They didn't rush it. Weeks passed. Their conversations lengthened, then deepened, threading through subjects that had nothing to do with coffee or money, or the careful architecture either of them had built around themselves. Doris watched all of it with the smugness of a woman who'd called it back in February. $17. My whole career, Doris said one morning. And I've never seen it buy someone breakfast conversation for 2 months straight. It's not about the money, Doris, Elena said. I know, honey, Doris said, grinning. That's exactly my point. In June, Julian came in on a Sunday, a day the shop was usually near empty, a day he'd never come before. I have something to ask you, he said, and I need you to actually think about it before you answer, not just say yes to be polite. That's an ominous opening, she said. Cross Dynamics is opening a small business incubator fund, he explained. Not charity, an actual investment arm, with real terms, real accountability. I want you to pitch me your shop idea. Formally. Like any other founder would, Julian, she said, I don't have a business plan. I have a savings account and a dream I mumble about at 2 in the morning. Then we'll build the plan together, he said. Not because of. He gestured between them, awkward for the first time since she'd known him. Whatever this is a separate thing. I'd offer this to anyone who makes coffee like you do and treats every stranger who walks through that door like they matter. I've watched you do it for over a year. That's not romance talking. That's just true. Elena looked at him for a long moment, weighing the offer, weighing the fear underneath it. The fear that accepting might blur every line she'd carefully drawn between them. And if I say no, she asked, then I'll keep coming at 7:12 a.m., he said, and I'll keep leaving $17 and none of this changes. The offer isn't a condition. It's just an offer. Okay, she said quietly. Let's build the plan. Autumn came, and with it, the kind of light that makes even a tired city look considered, deliberate, like someone dressed it carefully before letting it outside. Elena's business plan sat in a folder on Julian's desk, red pen notes in the margins, question marks beside numbers that needed sharpening, but it existed. It was real. In a way it hadn't been in June, and somewhere in the 6 months between the rainstorm and the folder, they had become something neither of them had quite named out loud. It was Elena, in the end, who said it first. On an ordinary Tuesday, No rain, no crisis, no anniversary to make it meaningful. Just an ordinary morning, 7:12 a.m., the bell coughing above the door. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Again?" "Always," he said. "If I hadn't asked you about the tip that day," she said, "if I just kept quiet, the way I told myself I would for over a year, do you think we'd still be standing here?" He thought about it, genuinely. "I think I would have kept coming either way," he said. "I think some part of me would have kept leaving that money whether you asked or not, because by then it wasn't really about my mother anymore. It was about a version of my day that made sense." "You were that version." "That's a very expensive way to fall in love," she said. $17 a day for over a year. "Cheapest thing I've ever done, actually," he said, smiling. "Everything else in my life costs a fortune and means far less," she laughed. "The real kind, the kind that startles its way out before you can stop it." And for a moment, the shop, with its faded awning and its coughing bell and its ordinary Tuesday light, felt like the center of something much larger than either of them had planned for. The shop is called Marianne's now. Small, warm, tucked 2 blocks from where Cross and Bean still stands, corkboard and all. Elena owns 60% of it. Julian, quietly, unassumingly, owns the rest. An investor, nothing more, at least on paper, he still comes in every morning. 7:12 a.m. Black coffee, medium, $3. He still leaves $17. Some things, it turns out, were never about the money at all. They were about a promise, kept quietly for years, until someone finally cared enough to ask why. And if you're waiting on a sign that someone notices you, that the small, unglamorous work you do every day actually means something to someone, maybe it looks like $17 on a counter. Maybe it looks smaller than that. But it's there. You just have to be brave enough someday to ask why.